Well, before we start, I tell you we are taping, so we can capture Marty McIntyre's presentation for any of you or for anybody else who missed this class. So we can have it on DVD if anybody would like to have it. We'll leave it in the library as well. So now we start officially. It's 5 o'clock, so good evening or good afternoon if you like. My name is Wafiq Wabi, and I'm thankful to Dr. Murray Twisi to give us his class, your students. And let me see by a show of hand, how many of you have been to Marty McIntyre's class last week? Okay, very good.
Last year.
Last year? Okay. Last year, very good.
Okay.
How many of you have been to the plant in Allsip in Chicago? Very good. Okay. Now, the plan would be like this. Today we'll get the theoretical background and the fun here on the screen and from Marty, and then on the 13th of October, we'll take 2 vans or 3 vans and go and visit a plant. And we'll talk about this later, and Dr. Tusi will give you the details so we can see how things are done in the plant, and maybe you can visit some projects. So without much ado, Marty McIntyre, and she will introduce herself.
Okay. Hi. I thought I recognized a couple of you from last year, but I work with PCI, which is the Precast Prestressed Concrete Institute. It's kind of a combination of a trade association, so we have about 235 member companies who manufacture precast products, anything from bridge beams, hollow core, double T's, any of the large structural type pieces of concrete that you would see coming to a job site on a truck. So no small lintels and nothing that goes underground. We're also an institute, which means we do a lot of work with universities doing research, product development, and kind of state of the industry work to kind of keep things up to speed. So this is going to be a review for some of you who've seen this already. But I just have a little bit of information for you that gives you kind of a nice introduction to precast. We're going to talk a little bit about what are the products that are manufactured, where are they used, and how are they manufactured. So feel free to stop me at any point if you have any questions, and I'd be happy to answer your questions for you. I always think when I'm starting to talk about precast that in some ways it's kind of fun to look at kind of the biggest or the best or the most interesting projects that have been done. So over the last year, I kind of put together, this is my own personal list of what I call the 7 wonders of precast, some of the projects that I think are some of the coolest precast projects that are out there. And that's kind of a nice way for me to get started. So you can see that they're all over the world, but of course I know more projects in the US than anywhere else, so a lot of them are right here in our own back door. Oops, oh, it didn't like getting transferred, I apologize. So this is supposed to show you the Bahai Temple. I can show you another picture of it. It's up here in the corner, sorry about that. I don't know why it didn't transfer. So the Bahai Temple is in Glencoe, Illinois, up north of Chicago, kind of near the lakefront on Lake Michigan. And it was actually done in the 1920s through the 1930s. It took quite a while to build. And the entire skin of it is actually architectural precast. It was manufactured in New York and then shipped piece by piece to Glencoe. And you can see on the dome and in some of the other areas, and if you could see the pictures that I had put on my slide, you'd be able to see that, some of the intricate detail that you can actually get out of architectural precast. Then those are all put together and it can really withstand the test of time. So it does a nice job doing that. In some ways, manufacturing, yes?
Would you please give us your definition of precast?
The definition of precast.
What precast means?
Precast is anything that's cast in a plant and then brought to the site. So it's cast out of concrete, and usually it's manufactured in some kind of formwork. In the case of the Bahai Temple, it's specially designed formwork with all of those intricate details. Actually, all of these would be specialty things, but it can also be kind of more mundane, double T's, hollow core, different pieces like that that are cast in steel beds where you repeat the same pattern or the same piece over and over again. So it's really, precast is really manufactured at the plant and then brought to the job site. So in some ways, with architectural precast and what happened with the Bahai Temple, precast has not changed a whole lot. If you had a client who was willing to pay that much money, put that much money into it, you could still get that kind of architectural precast and that same level of detail. I don't see a whole lot of clients looking for that, but that could happen. The things that have really changed in our industry since that was done in the 1920s and 30s is really the quality of the concrete that's being used. There's admixtures now that allow a much higher strength concrete to be used. There's self-compacting concrete, which allows the concrete to flow and to get into a lot of nooks and crannies a little bit better. And just the whole idea of repetition in the industry, that's one of the first examples of architectural precast. And now, you know, 50, 75 years later, it's become an industry. And, you know, it's just a much more common product than it was then. I don't know why my picture, it doesn't like my pictures. The second project that I like to talk about is the Chunnel. In a lot of ways, this is just as interesting. It might not be as beautiful to look at as the Bahai Temple, but just the scope of the project and the magnitude of what they were able to do with the precast is really remarkable. The entire tunnel, or Chunnel underneath the English Channel, is lined in precast. And they actually had to use two different designs for the precast on the two different sides of the Chunnel because of the soil conditions. And so they really had to look at the soil conditions and design the precast around it. So all of the liner components, they augered all of the dirt out of it and then placed the liners in there and created the Chunnel underneath the channel. So the Sunshine Skyway Bridge is kind of interesting because it's a 5-mile long bridge, and it was really an engineering feat that kind of combines the two things that we were looking at earlier. It's the engineering of the Chunnel and the magnitude of that project, but it's got some of the same beauty, I think, that the Bahai Temple has, that it really was able to kind of take the product and use it in a very organic way to make it beautiful and functional at the same time. So that was done in the 1980s, and at that time it was the longest bridge and the first of its type. The Jubilee Church is in Rome. Richard Meyer was the architect. He is actually a New York architect. This is a Catholic church in Rome, and Richard Meyer loves very bright, white, clean spaces. And the Jubilee Church really reflects his love of that kind of starkness and the whiteness. The interesting thing about it, I think, is really where you are able to take the precast and use it as a curved product, a molded product, a very flowable look. Unfortunately, you can't see the picture of the inside of the church, but the inside of the church is also very bright and white. Some of the things that make this one of my 7 wonders include that look of the church that looks kind of like a sail, and that it has that ability to come in different shapes, but they've still managed to use some repetition here. You'll see that they've repeated the same shapes in the 3 sails or 3 surfaces. And the other thing that's really interesting about this project is the bright whiteness of the concrete.